Hi everyone! Welcome to another episode of PNU Talks. I'm Dr. Majan Esteban-Basa, your Learning from Home buddy for today. I am a proud alumna of Philippine Normal University Manila from the College of Education, which we now call Faculty of Education Sciences. I have a degree in Bachelor of Elementary Education, Batch 2006 cum laude. I also finished my Master's of Arts in Teaching Reading in 2008 and my PhD in Curriculum and Instruction in 2012. Back in the Philippines, I've been teaching in several universities and was also invited by PNU Manila to be part of their faculty, wherein I was an associate professor both in the undergraduate and graduate level. At present, I am a Seattle-based educator here in Washington, also a book author and content editor for grades 7 to 10 books in language and literature. So, for my topic for today, it is Thriving Amidst Pandemic Cabin Fever, Strategy Toolbox Across the Disciplines. While we are all at home, why not come up with strategies? We'll never know what strategies we can come up with just by staying at home. So, what are your thoughts about cabin fever? What are the challenges in coming up with a strategy toolbox? And what strategies can we generate by just staying at home? So the thing is, are you all up for the challenge? I think this is something that is familiar nowadays.
Is it the new normal? You have to wear a mask when you go out and do errands?
Because nowadays, we have to always wear a mask every time we go out. We don't normally do that before. Or when we are browsing over IG or Facebook, we would see posts like, the meal for the day or being a cook, cooking at home, playing board games with your kids or with your family. Or for example, in my case, working out. Since the stay-at-home order here in Seattle, since March, I've been working out also to maximize my time. This might also be familiar. Long line to go inside the grocery store versus, that's actually my mom and my nephew back in the Philippines in SNR, wherein you can just go and get your grocery items without lining up or wearing a mask. It can also be like this. Having a running tour instead of going on a vacation, just like in the Philippines, it's summer. I know the beaches are really good, it's really nice. Back here in Seattle, it's springtime, but we have to be contented with a running tour because we cannot go out. Or probably you feel uneasy because you would rather be in the classroom teaching, probably taking care of 3, 4 kids, being a housewife for a while. You're missing your life as a teacher, as a classroom teacher. Or you feel deprived of the things that you used to do before, like being able to visit your relatives or going to the market, going to the mall, watching movies. You feel deprived. Or you really miss your students, even if they're so pasaway, they're so makulit, still you miss their voices, the way they interact with their classmates. Probably you don't mind being stuck in traffic. I don't know if this is true or not, but at times like this, sometimes you miss commuting. You miss waking up at 4 a.m., trying to get a ride on your way to work. Or you ran out of things to do. Assuming you're done watching your TV series, your K-drama, done listening to music, whether it's a heartbreak song or a K-pop type of song, or you're done reading books or novels. So how can we make good use of our time while we are at home? The thing is, you can come up with strategies unknowingly without you knowing it just by staying at home, doing simple chores, or spending time with your kids or with your family. Teachers are always resourceful. That's the key word here. The thing is, our students are really very diverse. The pen and paper test, for example, will not be enough. We have to always be on the lookout regarding the strategies, the techniques, the methods that we can use to make sure that they are motivated, even if they are staying at home, doing online activities or quizzes, or the face-to-face instruction that we give them. In choosing a strategy, there should be a systematic instruction. We don't just choose a strategy just so. What is the current state of our students? Are they bored at home? Do they just do computer games, or are they reading? Are they really very creative? What are the processes involved when you are trying to come up with a strategy? What are the essential components of the instruction? What are your reasons to use a strategy? The thing is, not just because you are going to be observed by your subject head or your department head, or there's an accreditation, it doesn't mean that you have to use 5, 7 strategies. There has to be a specific reason why you are choosing that strategy. What are your expected outcomes and the feedback from your students or from your subject head or department heads? There are 3 challenges that we are facing when we are trying to choose or come up with a strategy. Now, the first one, clarifying the concept of a strategy. Having a vague concept of a strategy is a huge barrier. If you don't know how to use it, when to use it, then you'll be lost. Similar with Alice in Wonderland. It's a novel and it was also made into a movie. Now, the part when Alice got lost, the Cheshire Cat asked her, "Where are you going?" And then the cat was also asking her, "Do you know your way out of the forest?" Alice said, "I don't know where I'm going." So the cat replied, "If you're not really sure your way out or where you're going, it's pointless." It's the same thing with us teachers. If we don't know how to use a specific strategy, when to use it, then we'll be lost, just like Alice. There is no goal. Now, the second strategy, or second challenge rather, is selecting the right strategies for our students at the right time. Now, trying to come up or choosing a strategy is a creative process. No two teachers are the same. Even if you go on YouTube or you search online, she's using KWL, what I know, what I want to know, what I have learned, maybe I can use that. But you have different classroom environment. You have different types of learners. You have different motivation. So the thing is, we all have our different strengths and weaknesses that we have to address. The third one is building confidence to make professional decisions. We have to deviate from the familiar procedures. Don't be predictable. So for example, if you're teaching literature, you don't want your students to be like, okay, Dr. Esteban-Basa will make use of movies, will make use of the boring, book. We have to read all the chapters and so on. Do not be predictable. Let's make our students anticipate, long for that literature class, math class, science, PE class. So the strategy toolbox checklist, we have to know what the strategy is, how to use it, when to use it, what is the appropriate way to use it inside the classroom, so that we'll be equipped and we'll know when and how to use it. So before we go to the strategies that we can develop while we are at home, there are 4 families of teaching methods. And the first one is the social interaction family. It is the relationship of the individual to society or to other people. So in other words, how do our students interact, whether it's a paired activity, it is a group activity, role-playing, or inquiry? How do they interact working with their peers? How do they see themselves versus other people? So the second one is information processing family. We're in information processing capability of the students. How do they handle stimuli? How do they handle specific situations? Is it through investigation and inquiry, memorization? Is it through synectics or creative process, which I will discuss further in the succeeding slides, or project reports? The third one is personal family. Development of individuals, their emotional life, and selfhood. So how do they give priority to self-awareness? Is it through indirect teaching, awareness and training? Do they relate a specific topic in their own respective lives? The fourth one is behavioral modification family, wherein we give priority to the observable behavior of our students. For example, direct instruction, anxiety reduction, and simulations. Now, if you're a laboratory teacher or a biology teacher and you ask your students to go to the laboratory, now, are they confident in performing a specific task? So we have to really identify the behavior of our students so that we can modify the strategy or the approach that we will use. So let's take time to reflect. Do we watch movies? Like, especially nowadays because of the pandemic, do we watch movies? We actually watch a lot of movies back here with my husband. Or do you watch TV series, movies, or K-drama? So when my parents were here visiting, they watched this K-drama and they would start episode 1 from 8 p.m. until like 6 a.m. They wouldn't stop because they're really hooked into that particular K-drama. Do you listen to music? Do you listen to breakup, love songs, or K-pop, or EDM? Do you read books or novels, even magazines or comics or newspaper? Do you build puzzles or Legos? Now, the reason why I ask these questions, it's because these things that you do while you're at home, you can make use of those and turn it into strategies that you can use whether teaching online or face-to-face. So let's start with a strategy. So one of the strategies is coming up or incorporating the lines of novels or books into your topic. So for example, a clip from Stephanie Meyer, I'm the type of professor who will really try to understand and get to know my students. So when Twilight was actually a big thing in the Philippines, I actually bought the book and would read it because I want to be able to use what my students are reading, watching, listening to, and incorporate it in my topics in the discussion. You can make use of these lines so that you'll know their behavior, which is one of the teaching families or methods. Another one is a novel by David Levitan, Every Day. So this all can also tap the behavioral and the social interaction family of the teaching methods based on certain lines. Or if you're teaching in the primary, it can be from Dr. Seuss. There are a lot of quotes, lines from the books, stories of Dr. Seuss that you can use. By simply reading a novel like Tuesdays with Marie by Mitch Albom, you can ask your students to relate it in their own respective lives, whether you're teaching literature or other subjects like grammar and language. If they're familiar with novels or movies, you can also make use of the lines uttered by famous characters in those movies or novels. So aside from books, we can also make use of dances. So I can't play the song because of copyright issues, but if, for example, I'm teaching literature like African chants, instead of saying, okay, this is where it originated and so on, a motivation can be from a song. If you're familiar with Waka Waka by Shakira, I ask my students to dance it by following the steps. So instead of being bored because of the typical history about African chants, they were able to have fun and really analyze the actions or the steps. Another one is this. Can you read the lines? Okay, how many of you actually read it? How many of you sang it? It is a song entitled What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction. Probably you're cooking or you're doing laundry and you would hear some songs. These songs can be used when you are teaching, for example, values integration, prepositions, grammar, and so on. Or you can have a familiar sing-along song and change the lyrics of the song based on the topic or your lesson. For example, if I'm teaching reading, I will just change "This is what dreams are made of" into "Let's go and read together." So another one. A familiar song to be used in teaching a lesson. If you're teaching Days of Creation, you can ask your students to sing the lines. For example, sing to the tune of "This Old Man." So please don't ask me to sing. I'd rather dance than sing. So baka po umulan. So next one. A familiar song for figurative language. Probably you're listening to music and you catch this one song. So for example, when I would drive or my husband and I would do errands and we would listen to music, I'll be like, hey, I think this can be used when you're teaching grammar. So this is one example. A song by Katy Perry called Firework, wherein you can incorporate or teach them figurative language. For example, simile, like a plastic bag, or like a house of cards. Instead of saying, I am so fragile, I am very sensible, you can say, like a house of cards. So there are a lot of songs that you can use when teaching figurative language. For lower level, you can also use Let It Go from the movie Frozen by Idina Menzel. For figurative language, or like personification, the howling. Wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. So just by listening to music unknowingly, we can make use of those music or songs in our discussion. Another one is, for example, when you are in a bookstore or when you are reading a story to your kids, to your siblings, nephew, or nieces, you can incorporate those in your topics when you are ready to teach, whether online or face-to-face. An example is Caps for Sale. This is a story about a peddler who is selling caps, different colors of caps. So it can be, for example, a blue cap or a red cap. You can use this whenever you're teaching math, like ask them to add everything that the peddler was able to sell. So that's one way. Another one is the story Sam's Sandwich, which I read to my nephew back in the Philippines. So you can ask them to make a sandwich. So this can be an output. And aside from asking them to answer the comprehensive or comprehension questions, ask them to come up with a sandwich inside the classroom for a healthy sandwich. Come up with a healthy sandwich in the classroom as a group so that you can also incorporate home economics. Or rainbow fish, so that you can tell them the importance of being friendly, being happy with what you have. It can also be by using synectics, which I mentioned earlier. Now, synectics, you are fostering creativity in students. So, for example, just by looking at the photo, you can say that I can spend forever in checking my students' work. So instead of saying I can, which is impossible, you can't spend forever checking your students' work. Or, for example, by looking at the video, it can be, the wind is whispering sweet things to my ears. So that can be a creative way to say it using metaphor. It can be a familiar song. So there are my graduate students back in PNU. Instead of just teaching, let's say, prepositions, it can be through a song. I don't know if you know the song, but it's from Justin Bieber. So there, it's a preposition. I can't play the music due to copyright. I'm sorry about that. Or it can be by using a Bonnie song for primary level. For example, if the word starts with the B sound, they have to stand. If they're already standing and they hear another word that starts with letter B with the B sound, they have to sit. Or a song to discuss sequence in math. So for example, my students did this. Teaching number sequence, but they asked everyone to sing. If you're teaching biology, for example, you can make use of group collaboration using actions and song. So this is social interaction. Because some students are actually visual and they can remember things when they do it. Or, again, due to copyright, I can't play the music. For math majors, dance steps in teaching math. It can be also an indirect teaching. Just by teaching them the dance steps, how to dance cha-cha, they can make use of those in teaching a math concept. It can also be by using synectics. instead of summarizing everything by using pen and paper, you can ask your students to summarize, for example, the values or the lesson or the moral that they were able to learn by being creative using arts and crafts. So by use magazines, newspaper, arts and crafts, you can ask them to come up with their own mascot, their own representation. So just by taking care of your kids, your siblings, they are simply cutting pieces of paper, you can think of ways on how to use those in your lesson. So this is an example. They are actually teachers in one of the workshops I conducted.
Basically for our mascot, he's wearing an antenna, here, which symbolizes, of course, the use of technology.
So making use of the mascot. Another example, this one is from Cebu.
The world literature, the power of the world literature. And we also have the Anglo-American literature. And
so by simply spending time with our kids doing arts and crafts, we can think of strategies where we can use them in the classroom. So we have my math majors wherein I asked them to come up with their own mascot, their representation of the 21st century teacher. And my biology majors. You can also make use of commercials or what we call culture jamming. So this empowers students to speak back. So for example, they can jam images of popular culture, making use of commercials, for example, in making sure that they speak their minds about a particular topic. So you can just show sample commercials. I can't play the commercial due to copyright, but I think you know this commercial. It's one of the commercials back in the Philippines from a fast food chain, and also this one from a milk brand. So you can make use of culture jamming. Just by sitting in your couch watching TV programs and then suddenly a commercial pops up. And you're like, okay, this commercial can be used when I'm teaching math, or this commercial can be used when I'm teaching science, and so on. Or when you're browsing, sometimes when you're on Facebook and there are like suggested videos, you can go to YouTube, click on that, you can go to YouTube and use the clips from authors that can help your students, even you, to start writing. And one of my favorite strategies is making use of movies. This can be used for values clarification, wherein teachers lead students through a series of moral and ethical debate. So I have here some movies. So for example, if you are teaching about bravery, you can make use of Troy, or the 90s Kid and Me, E.T., the E.T. phone home. It's about extraterrestrial. For modern, for our high school kids, it can be Iron Man, about responsibility, being strong, or being different. You can use Divergent. So while you're watching at home, you can analyze some of the movies, but make sure when you use it, you have to really see through everything, especially the lines and the scenes. Another one is, for example, 5 Feet Apart. Now this movie, I actually watched this on a plane on my way back here in Seattle, so I was crying. But the thing is, it's a movie about cystic fibrosis, which is a medical condition. So if you're a science teacher or a biology teacher, you can make use of this movie. It's about ethical dilemmas about prolonging each other's life because they are friends in the movie. Another one is Armageddon. So it's about trying to save the world, trying to sacrifice yourself in order to make the other person happy. Or it can be Deep Impact, preparing for natural disaster for science and health. Or Me Before You, another not really chick flick movie, but I watched it because my students were watching it and I want it to be an example, to make use of it as an example. There's this issue of euthanasia or mercy killing. So the character in this movie, he cannot really walk anymore. So he committed euthanasia or mercy killing. But the thing is, how can it be used in the classroom? Like you can have a debate about ethical and moral standards. Or it can also be about miscongeniality, wherein you use white lie. You try to impersonate someone in order to catch the bad guy. So again, teachers, in watching movies or using movies, we have to make sure we take note of the language, the scenes, and the commotion before we play it inside the classroom. It can also be K-drama. So again, the crash landing on you. It can be information and behavioral based on the teaching methods. For example, is war the answer to all our concerns? Sibling rivalry, patience. Or one of my favorite K-dramas, actually, Descendants from the Sun, the Korean version, teachers. It can be about love for country, honesty, being truthful. Or Netflix, if you have a Netflix account and you're watching a series or a show like Madam Secretary, it can be wherein you can ask your students about making decisions, problem solving, negotiation, which is an example which is from the show Shark Tank, trying to make a deal and explaining yourself. Next is using the 6 thinking hats. This is normally used in management or in business. So here, you divide your students into 6 groups and assign a specific color of hat to them. So for example, it can be you have the red and the blue hat. Now each hat represents a particular way of thinking. If you're holding the blue hat, it means you evaluate your decision. If you're wearing the green hat, it means your decision has to be creative. If you're wearing the yellow, you have to be optimistic. White, you only take note of the data on hand. Or red, meaning you only take note of your feelings, your emotions. And also the black, it means being careful or being careful in your judgment. So you can make use of this, for example, in laboratory experiments. If you have this problem, now what thinking hat will you use? Will you be optimistic? Will you only take note of your feelings? Will you evaluate your decision before, solving it and giving it to the class, your decision? So I have here sample. So I asked my students, I gave them several scenarios, and then they have to react based on the color of the hat that they are wearing. And then you can swap from one group to another. So this is an example from one of the talks I gave in Cebu.
For some, it is based on the responsibility towards the parents because nobody will take care of them. And for some, it is an obligation because it is how the parents raise them to.
Okay, so I am also a literature professor. So the story that I gave to the participants is about a girl taking care of the mom, a very sick mom. So I asked them, is taking care of your parents a responsibility or an obligation? So they have to react based on the color of the hats that they are wearing. So another one, by using behavioral modification through simulation and demonstration, if you're watching like certain shows, like So You Think You Can Dance, for, dancing, being patient, Songland for those aspiring songwriters, and then for cheer dancers, you can make use of this once the pandemic is done, or it can be also online through activities. You can ask your students to watch it and have some questions, give some questions for them to answer or to follow certain routines. So there are 3 rules to avoid discouragement, because sometimes, I have 10 strategies during the pandemic fever, but I don't know if it will all work. So here are at least 3 rules to avoid discouragement when using strategies to the students. So the first one, what the students are learning is more important than what particular strategy we use. It's not about using 5, 10 strategies, knowing, memorizing all the strategies, but did our students learn something? Did they have fun? The thing is, learning should always be fun. It has to be something that they will remember and they can say, okay, that topic was very difficult, but I had fun. Let's be kind to our students. Second is, the students' thinking is what matters, actually not the specific classroom strategy. So you can be successful with a strategy, with the use of this strategy, but did the students understand it? were they able to think logically and have reasoning? And the third one, we have to tailor fit everything to match our students. We have to make sure, okay, if their level is, for example, 10, the strategy should match it. If, for example, we have students who are really good in listening to music, following steps, doing role playing, being active, not passive. So we have to make sure to use a strategy that will work for them. If we are teaching 5 sections, I know it's very difficult to come up with several lesson plans, but we have to adjust it. Let's say section 1 will have this strategy. Section 3 is having a difficult time in doing book reports, so we change the strategy to use for that particular section. So we have to tailor fit it to the students. We are still responsible for the strategies that we will use. We have to deliver the program of instruction. I know it is not the normal thing to do, staying at home, taking care of our kids 24/7, and we have reports to also submit and to also be online for meetings, but we have to make sure that we are responsible, making sure we make good use of our time while we are at home. Evidently, everything should be a meaningful experience for our students. Let's make learning fun. Let's make it enjoyable and something that they will not forget. So that actually ends the presentation, but I have some questions to summarize everything. Let's see. Are there 3 ideas that you learned today? Let's try to think. It can be 1, it can be 2. What is the 3, 2, 1? So the 2 is, are there 2 interesting things that you realize? Probably can be, by watching commercials, it's not really boring. I shouldn't mute the TV, but I can use commercials in teaching literature. I can use commercials in teaching history, for example. So that can be an interesting thing. Or if you have questions, just comment it down below and I'll try my best to answer those questions, or if there are clarifications. All right, so these are some of my references. And before I end, I just want to thank everyone, especially PNU, Philippine Normal University Manila, for again inviting me. Thank you, everyone. God bless, and please stay safe. Again, this has been Dr. Maria Majan Esteban-Basa, a proud alumna of Philippine Normal University Manila, batch 2006, your Learning from Home buddy. So again, thank you and bye.